When I was a kid, I had to go through quite a few different events. Growing up in a violent neighborhood, you never seem to have a quiet moment to yourself. That, and living in a home of multiple siblings and always working parents. A little background is needed for the context of this story. My father worked in the business district of the city, so he always arrived home late. My mother worked at a fast food job, but was always a few cities away. Today, she was covering another shift at another location. My siblings were at their friends' houses for the night. It was just me. I arrived at home around 5 p.m. I returned from my after-school sports practice, which was wrestling and boxing. I swung the door open walking in, throwing my bag on the ground to relax after a hard practice and school day. There marks my first issue. I did not notice it until I got to my room, taking an earbud out to listen to my surroundings. How quiet it was. Even for my neighborhood, there was always a loud sound or problem. I took it as maybe it was a chill day for everyone, since everyone had one. I spread my homework out on my desk, laid my gloves and wrestling shoes next to my closet, and put my hoodie on my closet door. For the next 2 hours, I would promptly work on my homework, taking micro breaks to recharge since midterms were coming, and I wanted to get good grades to get into a good college. Around 6:45 p.m., I was about to put my other earbud back in to listen to this song next on my playlist. I heard a door close. I flinch and stay still. I listen for any sudden movements. I always had this phobia of being home alone with a quiet intruder inside the house without my knowledge, especially if they are dangerous. Silence. Ambient sounds from the HVAC system tamper my mind. I settle down and choose to continue working on my assignments, deciding to leave one earbud out for safety. At 7:15, I complete my assignments and studies and decide to stretch. I turn my chair facing the window and scrolling through my phone on social media and decide to turn to the next song. My phone times out. Since I did not touch anything on the screen, my stomach dropped, and the reflection of my phone screen was a man with a pig mask staring at me from inside my closet. I was horrified. Hundreds of questions started rushing through my head. Where did he come from? Was he there the whole time? Why is he just sitting there? Then I realized, maybe he doesn't know, but I know he is there. So, I say loud enough for him to hear, and for my own sanity, hopefully he doesn't think I'm faking it. Oh man, I knew I shouldn't have eaten those beans and prunes after practice. I get up, grabbing my other earbud to turn my head slightly, so our eyes don't meet, and make it out of the bedroom, making sure to close it behind me. I open the bathroom door to give off the impression that I am in the bathroom, lift the toilet seat, letting it hit the top of the toilet to let out the noise, turn on the light, exit the bathroom, and closing the door behind me. I carefully walk down the stairs to not make any noises, walk quietly out the back door where my bedroom window has no visibility of me, and close the door behind me. Before I do so, I hear my bedroom door open and a footstep from upstairs, and something scratching with each footstep, and then a shallow knock, which I presume to be on the bathroom door, followed by a loud bang. I jump my backyard fence and hid behind a bush. I immediately call 911 and explain the situation. They told me to stay put and watch from a safe location until the police arrived. Luckily, I live 5 minutes from the closest station. They arrive quickly, under 10 minutes. They meet me in front of the house. They were already informed about the entire situation. They asked me to open the door. I did. And they went in, with their guns drawn. I stood at the front door, listening. They checked the entire downstairs and made their way upstairs. After about 6 minutes, I heard, "Come out with your hands up, or we will fire. Right now, USOB. Put it down." I heard 2 gunshots and officer down. 4 extra cop cars arrive on the scene. Loads of police officers enter my home. 4 went upstairs, while the rest of them, 15 still downstairs, went to the basement. A chair from my kitchen fell. I didn't notice the officers put that there and went downstairs and started yelling. I was confused and still in shock. I received a call from my dad and my mother on a 3-way. They asked what was going on. I told them what I knew, and an officer said she knew the rest of the story and took the phone to explain the entire ordeal. She said, when the first 2 officers arrived, they checked the entire downstairs, found nothing out of the ordinary except in the basement. They noticed it right away, a funky smell. But also, when they opened the door, they saw one figure trying to blend in with the stuff downstairs. That was red flag number 1. The other red flag was that they heard multiple sounds with various muffled shh and coughing sounds. They called backup for that, locking the door and putting a chair under the doorknob. They continued upstairs and cleared each room. When they arrived at my room, the closet was empty. They moved around the room. Suddenly, one of the officers felt a sharp pain in their leg and screamed. The officer drawled and yelled for the figure to come out from under the bed and to put the weapon down. The figure had a machete. What scared the officer was that it wasn't just one guy, it was 2. He fired on both guys when they tried to rush them. He called for backup again during that moment. Both my parents were mortified and said they were on their way. The call ended. The officer pulled me aside, away from the view of the intruders. She said they're about to be brought out. I saw from her car 26 people in animal masks being arrested and walked to the police vans. Before they were all sent away, one of them, the pig mask, yelled out, "Where did you go, little piglet?" We were going to have a stew together, all of us, around a fire, watching you beg for your life, as you're cooked as dinner and entertainment. After my parents arrived, I hugged them and cried. I cried so hard for so many weeks after that. I went to therapy and felt better after a couple of years. Sadly, though, the nightmares and terrors never went away. To those listening to this story, check your home, even if you feel safe. To those monsters that terrorized me, I hope you get yours in prison. Growing up in a city where no one cares about your problems, it is easy to fall upon the wrong path. Too easy, I might say. I fell into that easy pit. I was young, naive, and thought everything should be fair when it wasn't. Enough rambling. Here is the story. I woke up to yelling in our apartment building. My mother returned drunk from her usual after-drinking spout to deal with the issues of life and how she thought everything around her, even herself, was a screw-up. She needed constant reassurance, and sometimes even more booze than water to help her relax. My dad, he was always away. We heard from him, here and there, but not often. He worked constantly, seeing as he had 2 salary positions, both requiring him to travel quite often. He was a simple man, always wanting to help where he could, but it dragged him down as he could easily have been rich and left this sad family behind. But he didn't. You're wondering, how did he help us when he was gone all the time? He sent money back a few times each week to handle the bills and Mom's massive amount of student loan debt. I'm not going to say what it is, but the interest was outrageous, and the amount was over $250,000. I also had a little sister. Her name was Janice. Growing up, I remember when I was young, having to help welcome my younger sister into the world. Her cries, screams, and giggles were natural and innocent, but my family dynamic wasn't. I would have to watch her constantly and sacrifice my childhood as a young kid. Days and nights without mingling, going out to have fun with all the other kids. Just my younger sister and her babbish language, or baby talk as many call it. I had to grow up quickly, but that also involved me handling most of my mother's responsibilities. Rent, car payment, utilities, student loan payments, etc. Are you wondering how I handled this at a young age? Simple. All the locations to handle the payments were within a 10-minute walk of the apartment, and my father gave me a card to handle the payments, just in case my mother went on her drunken routines. The office officials seemed unnerved that I did that and understood my situation after a one-time phone call from my dad, so I was a regular. There were days my mother would not bring home enough money and my dad went MIA, and we were stuck without any financial provisions. So, as any young teenager would do, you look for alternatives. And remember what I said in the 3rd sentence. I fell into that. I ran into this guy. He goes by the name of Patrick. He always had a hand in some sort of deal or trouble in our part of the city. He also took care of the people in our building from time to time, my mother included. I talked to him in our building's stairwell on some options. At first, he was reluctant because he didn't want me to get into any trouble, as he saw a bright future for me in the world. But he also knew my situation. He told me about this local gig he had just outside the city limits, to rob a house. A local millionaire lived close to make some money off his valuables. He also had a buddy who worked on the millionaire's team and knew his schedule. The connect said he was out of town, so it was the perfect time. He set up a simple sting. It would include 5 guys, including myself, to invade and escape. He said it was a simple job, and everybody would get their cut and not talk to each other afterwards to keep anonymity from the police. He said the cut was big enough to buy my family land and a house, anywhere within the price range. How could I say no? I accepted and waited for him to knock on my door that night. I heard the knock. I got up and walked to my mother. Told her that I was heading out to get some fresh air, but it didn't matter. Her and Janice were fast asleep. So I locked the door behind me and left. We met up in one of the guys' getaway cars. When I entered, everyone, even myself, were masked up to not know each other's identity. One of them explained that the car was tagged from somewhere else. Everyone should be wearing gloves and black attire. Everyone was given their destined items to fit their roles. I was given a gun, 9 duffel bags, deflated and compact so that they were easy to carry, a burner phone, and a knife, if I needed to use it. We all also had code names. We spelled masked. I was A. We drove off to our destination. It was quiet in the car. Everyone knew what their role was. There was a 5th person, if you were wondering, but we all know who that was. We arrived and filed out. K stayed in the car, as he was the getaway driver. The other 2 were specialized in something. M was a technology wizard. He opened the electronic gate and stopped the alarms from being tripped. S was the marksman. He tranquilized the guard dogs before we were within 20 feet of the house. I was the napper. I had multiple bags with me to grab all the supplies as I was a strong teenager. We entered the home. The door was left open. It was a grand home with a wide entrance and a stunning view. But we were after other prizes. We made our way through the house, grabbing a ton of jewelry, game consoles, computer equipment, money locked in safes. M was also a locksmith, which included safes as well. Anything small and manageable we could carry. We had 9 bags full of items, and we saw one more prize. A ring. A ring that was on the nightstand next to the bed. It looked expensive. S told me to grab it as they would secure the bags in the car, and that the dogs would wake up soon, as it would only keep them asleep for 45 minutes. As they left, I went for the ring, only to be stopped by someone. A man. It was the millionaire. He was here. I was terrified as we were given weapons, but I did not want to hurt anyone. It was supposed to be an in-and-out job. As I was silently panicking, I noticed he was intoxicated. I walked around him and grabbed the ring and started to make my exit when a vase slammed against the wall. He said to give it back, and I shook my head no. He pulled something out. A knife. A very sharp knife. It looked like a knife you go into the wild to cut up prey, to eat type of knife. He charged, trying to slash me. He was also lucid, so it was somewhat easy to predict his movements and dodge all his slashes. But one issue arose. He grabbed for something. I heard the cock of a gun. Then I realized that he was about to draw it and fire. When his gun left his sleeve, I swallowed as I drawed first and fired. I'm not the best shot, but sadly, I hit a money shot today, square in his temple, leaving him dead as he hit the ground. You're thinking, where's the horror in that? Yeah, you did what you had to do. No, you weren't there. We were not alone in that room. To my left was a young girl. Turns out to be his 5-year-old daughter. She had covered her ears as the ring of the barrel deafened her for a moment. But she looked at me, and then her dad. The blood splattered on her forehead and on her cheeks. She ran over to him, shaking, saying Dad repeatedly, soon yelling his name. M&S returned, hearing the shot. They looked at the scene, then looked at me and asked what happened. I explained, and they said, what's done is done. They motioned for us to leave. After that day, I returned sad. We live in a home now, in another place. I later found out that that little girl has no family left. Her father was all she had. Her mother abandoned her. Her grandparents and their siblings passed away, and her father was an only child. Also, as it turns out, the father lost all of his fame and fortune that night. He was drinking to forget about the scandal he was in. A private firm wanted to buy his assets and equity in exchange to make the issue disappear. Sadly, he didn't read all the paperwork, and this included them taking his royalties away as well, leaving him and his little girl with nothing. Not even the house they owned. She was left penniless. A world that stole everything from her. A system that ate her alive. I wonder about her every day, being alone in this cruel world.